Good evening. We probably pass them every day. There is no mark like wealth or rank or privilege to set them apart. Just ordinary people in a supermarket, on a bus, perhaps the man or woman behind a shop counter. Nothing would suggest to us as we go about our daily business that there are heroes in the subways. Men and women who have known the hell of war and attained honor. But we don't know to ask about it, and so they don't talk about it.
This country's Day of Remembrance draws to a close tonight. We ask you to share with us this Remembrance evening the life of just one woman, one of the tens of thousands who fought as our allies in the Second World War and who came from the ruination of Europe to this country to become one of those ordinary Canadians you pass on the street every day. Here then is Ludka's story, narrated by David Main.
Cut the arm off. Cut the off.
Grenada, Lebanon, Afghanistan, Falkland. Each year, an average of 14 wars are fought somewhere in the world, like this. At this moment, there are at least 40 places where differences of opinion are being settled, like this. And in this century, more than 76 million people have died, like this. It used to be that the victims of war were the professionals, men who made the business of war their business. But since World War II, 2/3 of the war dead have been civilians, people with the misfortune of having wars fought in their hometowns. For the past 65 years, we have set aside this day to remember the victims of war and to rekindle our hopes for peace. And for 65 years, the horrors of war have only multiplied. There are many survivors of war, and each has their own memory. Some were in the military, others were civilians. Many are heroes. Ludka and Ludka Sas Korczynska are two of them. Their country, Poland, has had a long history of occupation and resistance. This is the story of only one woman in one country who, like millions of others, found herself surrounded by. Risking her own life, she saved the lives of over 300 people. And for those people, Ludka Sas Korczynska is a hero. This is her story. It started in 1920, when Ludka was orphaned at the age of 5 during the Soviet invasion of Poland. 20 years later, she would lose what remained of her family when Hitler and Stalin secretly agreed to divide Poland among themselves. September 1st, 1939, Germany invaded Poland from the west. 16 days later, Soviet troops once again marched in from the east. The Polish army, outnumbered and squeezed from both sides, was unable to defend itself successfully. Poland was no more.
There was no normal life when enemy is in the country. There is no normal life. There is nothing. They're just going house to house, looking, searching for the soldiers, for the remnant of the army, and so on. Everybody in the nation started to be political immediately. The same day they are occupied. You realize sometimes that you have nothing to lose. Do you want my personal story? So I will tell you. I lost my fiancé in the 6th day of a war. He was wounded and then crushed by a German tank. I got the news from the soldier who escaped and brought me and all his cart and military medal. Then my brother, as I told you, I was orphan. I had only one brother, one sister. My brother was arrested as a young army officer, 20 years old, and took to Russia with no address. It seemed to me that I lost all interest of life, my personal life. And then it seemed to me that if I will give the service to people who need me, this will be the best I can do with myself.
The Polish underground began to emerge. While the Home Army struggled to reorganize itself, all civilians were expected to resist the occupiers as best they could, despite brutally severe Nazi and Soviet retaliation. Many risked their lives as radio operators, hospital workers, observers, couriers, and guides. But the soldiers had only two options, either to stay in Poland with the Home Army or join the Polish armed forces abroad, organized by General Sikorski in France.
I entered the underground because the nation was helpless, disorganized. Our forces ceased existing, and all the students and youth my age started to organize themselves to help the people who wanted to join army abroad to get out of country. As I knew the mountains, they said, you are going to be placed in Worochta, and then we will supply people to you, and you will carry them over to Hungary.
In 1939, Ludka was 24 years old. Poland was a country torn in two, but by 1941, Germany declared war on the Soviet Union and took over what had been Soviet-occupied territories. A student from Lviv, Ludka was placed in Worochta. Her assignment was to lead Polish soldiers over the mountains into Hungary. From there, they would go on to join the Polish armed forces in France. Tadeusz Krzyzewski, now the Polish correspondent in London for Radio Free Europe, was one of the 320 soldiers Ludka led to safety.
I was 18 then, so it was a great adventure of my life. As far as Worochta is concerned, we were given an address of a sanatorium for tuberculosis, for TB people. And we were just told, go there and say that you want to go to Hungary, and they would know what to do with you. So eventually we arrived there, and immediately a young girl, a fair-haired girl, appeared and greeted us very heartily. She wore a white uniform, a nurse's uniform. That was Ludka.
There was a meeting point known to us, and then I gave a few instructions that nobody has to speak, that everybody has, we will go follow each other. We are not going in a group, there are no highways, just a path through the mountains. And then silence is absolutely necessary.
When the night came, in came Ludka. We had to walk through the country, had to cross some streams, had to cross some thickets, and we had to climb very, very steep slopes. And I must say, we were in a very good form physically because we were soldiers, but she was better than we were. Apparently she must have done it herself. So she marched in front and kept hurrying us and saying, come on, it's not far, but it was far.
I was afraid, very much afraid. Russian soldiers in the mountains heard us, that must have heard us, because the patrol started to call each other. You could hear on the left side one shot, just behind you 2 shots, that on the right side 2 shots, and 1 shot here and 1 shot. So that time I was afraid. We were running, still running and running down and falling down and running, and we jumped through that place to the border, to the other side.
So about 3 or 4 hours later, it was very nearly midnight, we arrived to one point, and she said, well, this is where I have to say goodbye. And she handed us over to a guide who already waited there.
I never think of them now. Because I don't even know whether they are alive and who is alive. They were anonymous to me. I took them by night, I left them by night. I never knew their name, and I never asked the names. Nothing. I came, I took the people, I put them to the safety.
Now we realize how heroic she was. And we had no way of expressing our gratitude. We just kissed her hand and wished her everything best in the world. And we said we meet in free Poland, because we truly did. So that's the last time I saw Ludka. I've never seen her since.
The risks involved in underground work were extremely high. If caught, a woman would either be sent to a concentration camp or executed on the spot. Hundreds of women involved in the Polish underground perished at the hands of the Nazis and the Soviets.
I never thought about that I have to sacrifice my life. I was like anybody else, scared stiff when a moment, terrible moment came, you know, that could I could life. I was scared.
After Worochta, Ludka served as a courier between Hungary and Poland. She spent the last months of the war in a labor camp from which she escaped a week before V-Day. She's lived in Canada for over 30 years now, is president of the Polish-Canadian Women's Federation, and has worked for the government for nearly 2 decades.
Very few people knew of my past, very few. I learned this at the beginning of my staying in Canada. I was so full of a story that I was bursting, and I saw that people were not interested. I never thought I will be living in a different countries than Poland. Never. When I came to Canada, it seemed to me that I reached heaven. I consider myself a happy person who had a lot of luck in her life. I am proud of my past, that the service was for Poland, for my country. And if Canada would need me, I would be in service for Canada as well. I'm not young anymore, but I still would serve Canada. I am living already in Canada longer than I lived in Poland. I would like to be remembered as a Polish woman who loved her country more than herself, who loved her nation very much. During the wartime, they were so great. They helped us, those engaged in the underground. I was in love with my nation. And I would like to be remembered as one of those who didn't care for their life if only they could help to free their country. There are so many stories in my mind from wartime. So many stories, so many things to remember and to forget. The Warsaw Uprising, Polish soldiers fighting on all fronts of the world. My brother, my uncles, they died or were killed or perished in Siberia. In each of us is a potential hero. Just a lot of the people didn't have opportunity to show how heroic they would be. And I don't wish them